Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are going to go over parts reporting in your RO Writer. We're going to take a look through the reporting module and what reports it offers that can help you track and adjust your parts for maximum profitability. So parts profit reporting. In today's webinar, we're going to focus and give you an overview of your parts purchases and your profitability. There are far more reports in our writer than most of us realize. Some of those reports can help you keep your finger on what's going on day to day. Parts are one of the most important profit or loss areas in any shop. It's too easy to lose track of parts and wind up with a parts deficit you don't know how to find, where to even look, where it started. And I know I've said this before. You need to think chess, not checkers. You have to be able to see the whole picture and be able to react to what you see. That means you need to know where to look, what to look for, and what changes to make to have an impact on your profitability. I do want to point out the fact that the databases that I'm using in my system are just tester stuff. Don't use them as a basis for your own profitability numbers, labor rates, percentages, or anything along that lines. Mine is very limited, so don't take my numbers as gospel as what you should be doing with your business. Okay, so where we're going to look. The reports we're going to look at today are in the RO Writer reporting module and the inventory modules, and we're going to take a little jaunt over to take a look at the new CS portal as well, because there's some cool parts reports in there. Some of these you may already utilize. I always recommend we start with the summary report for a solid overview. Then we're going to look at the parts detail. Did everything get on the ticket? Did everything get charged correctly? Then we're going to kind of take a stroll off in the weeds a bit and look at some other things that can help you. My goal is to give you another way to use these reports. Even if you look at them now, you may not be looking at them with a different eye towards catching errors or looking at your profitability. So my goal is to give you that look. We're going to look at the outside purchases report, the pricing exceptions. And then, like I said, we're going to take a look at a couple things in inventory. And then we're going to end our little jaunt today off in the new central service portal. So first stop, summary report. Parts are one of the most important profits and loss areas in the shop. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. When you run your summary report as it relates to parts, what we're looking at here is that parts margin. I know a lot of us use cost plus multiplier or profit versus margin, but as today, for all intents and purposes, we're going to look at margin because we want a summary report to be the first place we look. So in my instance here, I'm at 47.68%. What I want you to think about when you start looking into your reporting is there's caveats here. Do you do a lot of tires? Do you do oil changes? Do you do a lot of dealer parts, engine and trans jobs? All those are going to net you a lower parts percentage just by the nature. You can't get the same markup as those you're going to get on like a brake job. So bear that in mind when you look at yours. And if you do have a mixed bag, don't forget you can use breakout feature to keep your peanut butter out of your chocolate. And you can segregate out certain labor operations and its associated parts by going into your labor operations and configuration. And underneath each labor operation, you'll see a little box that says breakout. And what it will do is break out both the parts and labor associated with those labor operations. So let's say if I had broken out my tires, instead of my tires being included here and kind of sinking the bell curve, as it were, to lower my parts percentage, it would show here those that I've broken out, I may be at 30%, but instead of taking my 30% against my 55 and dropping it down to 45, it's going to let that show the higher percentage with the tires or oil changes or whatever I've broken out not included. I'll still be able to see my aggregate here where it's all going to be added together. So if you want to break your oil changes, tires, or any of those harder to justify the percentages, by all means, think about using the breakout. Now, if you look at this percentage and it seems low, take a look at your parts matrix for both your inventory and your outside purchase. So if I go into my configuration parts, and I'm just going to look at my outside for the sake of argument. This is the matrix I have for my outside. So from 0 to 1, I'm marking it up at 80. From 101 to 5, I'm going 75, and so on down the line. There are cool things to look at where it will let you know where you're going. And in my case, I've got mine set by labor operation as opposed to supplier. A lot of us are set by supplier, but it will give you the ability to take a look and analyze where the majority of your sales are on that matrix. So you might be going, oh man, I'm at 40% for 60% of my parts. I need to adjust that. And that will improve your profitability. So use your summary report as a guideline to get you started on where you need to tweak from there. If you're not using smart matrix pricing, I highly recommend you take a look at it as an option versus just it is what it is. So don't be afraid to adapt and look at new options to increase your profitability. So the next step is going to be a parts detail report. And I am a firm believer in this report. It's so easy to lose track of parts and wind up with a parts deficit. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. And you don't know how to find the source. This is your first line of defense against that. If you don't pull your parts detail report daily, I highly recommend you do. Start here every day. If you do it daily, you won't wind up with a huge forensic mess that at the end of the month you're trying to track things down. Where did it go? Why isn't it on a ticket? How much did it cost? Where did it come from? Did the cost get in there correctly? If you run this every day and make sure everything that came in went onto a ticket and was then priced correctly and the returns and cores are handled directly, if you do that daily, it makes it far easier and less of a mess at the end of the month. And before you go, oh, Jackie, it's such a pain. Yeah, it is tedious to do this daily. However, what I recommend is taking your physical part slips, the invoices you get from your parts dealer, and match line by line to your parts detail report. It'll take maybe 10 minutes. It's well worth the effort. And if you're using accounts payable, it allows you the ability to catch some things before, again, it gets too far down the road and you're now looking at a mess you've got to try and untangle. So your parts detail report is going to run either by date range or daily. And what it's going to give you is all the parts that are on closed tickets, not what's committed on open ROs or estimates, just what closed and went out the door. And I want you to bear in mind as you're looking through this, it will include both your inventory and your outside purchases, your stock and non-stock parts. And while you're looking at this, it also gives you a good idea of where your margin is. So if anything seems low, okay, so let's say this was a 20%. Oh, it's a dealer part. Okay, that's okay. I don't need to worry about it. It's a dealer part. But if it came from one of my main vendors and it's at 20%, wait a minute. Now you can go back and look at the RO right there when it's fresh in your service writer's mind. Why did you mark this down to 20%? Why didn't you let the matrix do its job? Because if they're overriding the matrix, and we'll get into that with a different report, then you need to have a different conversation with your service writer. But as I said, highly recommend you pull that parts detail report every day at the end of the day and match the slips to it so nothing gets lost in the cracks. Do you have a slip there that is not on this report, not committed on a ticket, and it should have been marked as return? You can catch it there instead of at the end of the month going, oh man, where did I get it from and how do I return it? So now we're going to take a look at the next report on my top list. It's the outside purchases report. This is what's going to happen if you don't do your parts detail every day. You're going to wind up with that stuff. So if you ignored my previous suggestion about using that parts detail report daily to keep an eye on things, now you've got a parts deficit. You don't know where to start. So now we got to go into detective mode. This is where some of these reports will come in handy, especially this one. This report gives you broken down by vendor outside purchases by the date range. So if you imagine your income going into buckets from your summary report, everything parts related goes into a parts bucket. Everything labor related goes into a labor bucket, and so on and so forth. At the end of the month, what it shows you spent in parts on this report should be close to what you actually pay out. Now, yeah, I know there's exceptions. You bought a case of filters 3 days before the end of the month. You don't have time to sell that through on tickets for the cost to equal the sale. I get that. There's going to be exceptions, but you will get an idea of the flow. So where it is going to help is, so say on my statement, I spent 20 grand on Napa that month. But when I look at my sales on this, I show 15 grand. 5 grand is a lot of filters. So where did it go from? Now you can go from your statement and invoice to invoice to what is on this report and make sure everything wound up on tickets. Again, if you'd done the reports detail report daily, you would have caught it at the time instead of waiting till the end of the month. But it does give you a last ditch effort at the end of the month. Then you can literally go invoice to invoice to the report, find out what missed, what was supposed to be returned, was there a core that got tossed, and give you an idea to reconcile everything at the end of the month. Now remember, this report, and here's another tech tip. You go back to your return shelf and you've got a distributor cap. You have no idea if it was supposed to go in a car, did it wind up getting charged and didn't wind up in a car, should it have been returned, and so on and so forth. We've all got them. Remember, this report can be exported. And what I mean is if I'm in any report, so let's pull up, we give it a decent date range, and we're looking at the outside purchases. When I pull this up to screen, you'll notice this icon in the top corner that looks like a stack of paper with a little arrow facing right. If I click that button, it asks if I want to export the report. Now, I love myself a good spreadsheet. I am an Excel princess. I'm a big fan. So I like to dump everything out into Excel because it gives me the ability to sort and write formulas and all sorts of fun stuff. We'll keep it basic. You have the option of exporting this report as a PDF, a CSV, or an Excel file. Now, what I recommend is exporting this file as a CSV. Here's my logic, is if you export this as an Excel, it tries to keep all the formatting that you see on this report. So it keeps the header information and the columns and the merge cells and all that stuff. And then when you open it up in Excel, you wind up having to break everything apart to get to the point where you can sort. If you export as a CSV, it throws everything automatically into its own column. You wind up with hell of columns you don't actually need, but it does make it easier for you to sort. You can just delete the columns you don't care about. So if you've got a distributor cap back there, part number 12345, if I export it to a CSV, I have the ability to now come to the column with the part numbers in it and sort the whole thing by the part number, find and see if that part number was on a closed ticket. If it's not, then you can go back to the individual slips, but it does make it a little bit easier and you don't have to fight all the way through if it's in a CSV to be able to organize it. So don't be afraid to use this outside purchases report. And it's always a good idea, especially if you are doing your own books. You know how much you're writing a month to a particular vendor. This gives you an idea where you can run this and say, okay, I show for that date range, I've spent X amount with advance. How much did I have written in checks? And it'll give you the ability to at least try, if you've got a parts deficit, find it, and at least start trying to figure out how to undo it. So it's a good idea to do. And again, what kind of margin are you getting for the vendor? Should you adjust a particular vendor? Are you shorting yourself or are you doing well? I mean, heck, every time I buy something from Auto Value, I'm at 78%. Rock and roll. But when I order from Advance, I'm only hitting 50. Why? So this allows you to forensically go back and take a look and see exactly what you've got going. So the next report we're going to take a look at is called the pricing exceptions. It's not a report that gets used very often, but I suggest it becomes a training tool because exceptions should be just that. They are exceptions, but they shouldn't be the rule. And what this report will let you know is whether or not your matrix is being used, whether they're letting the matrix do its job, or, I know this sounds kind of silly, so what I mean is your service writer overriding the matrix, or are they letting it do its job? Overriding in the case of price matching or customer satisfaction is one thing, but your service writers aren't the ones signing the front of the checks. They may not know what your shop needs to pay the bills. What percentage are you looking for and do you need in a profit in order to pay those bills? If you find you do have someone that's fighting the matrix, maybe you can work with them and understand why. A service writer should not feel like your shop is not worth what you're getting charged. They shouldn't be embarrassed by what the price is. My first job in automotive, worked for an old guy, loved the bones of the man. His favorite phrase was, I didn't build it, buy it, or break it, my friend. So when he went to a customer and said, it's $2,000 to fix your car. And the guy went, yeah. It eased that guilt in himself going, all right, I didn't build this car. I didn't buy it. I haven't been driving it. I didn't break it. It's my team's job to fix the car. So if you've got a service writer, they need to understand that. They should not be embarrassed. Our job is to sell as a service writer. We do it by helping people by fixing their cars. We are doing ourselves and the customer an injustice if we're not selling appropriately. On an exception report, it's going to tell you every time the pricing differed than what it should have been based on your matrix pricing. So if you come through here, and you can run it by service writer, or you can run it all together. You can run it by profit centers if you want to, if you're using profit centers. And what it'll do is give you the ability to see, why did we sell that at a negative? Why did it go out the door at 0? Why was it at 20% when it should have been at 60? And what I recommend is do run it by service writer, because that will let you know whether it's a global issue or whether it is purely one specific service writer that you seem to be having an issue with. And it does tell you what the part was. So if you look at it and go, why was that low? Oh, it was a tire. Oh, it was a warranty part. Whatever the case was, you can nip it in the bud and work with that person and say, hey guys, we need to do better, and see where that goes with you. Now, some of us do and some of us don't use that inventory module. If you are, there is a couple good things to keep an eye on as you're going through. There is a physical report that if you look under the reports, there is an inventory list option here. And you can include the stuff that's marked for stocking and non-stocking consignment if you use them. And what this does is it will bring up a physical printout with a column to allow you to adjust what you've actually got. It lets you print out everything in your inventory with a handy dandy line next to it. Those of you with larger inventories, I recommend exporting this or saving it as a PDF and doling them out when you have a lull in the shop to have somebody go back and check your physical count. Now, if you do find that you need to correct your inventory, everybody, come on, Walmart down to the mom and pop grocery stores, they do a physical count at least once a year. You guys should be doing the same thing. It also will give you the ability to say, okay, I've had 15 of these things on a shelf for a year. Why am I still stocking it? And you can maybe swap it out for one of the parts that you should have in stock that you don't have. Oil filters come to mind. There's kind of an ebb and a flow with those. So if I pull that inventory list, it's going to pull every darn thing on that list. So let's say I needed to adjust it. There's two ways you can adjust your inventory. You can come in here, view, add, edit, pull up a part, edit the part, and change your own hand. What you want to do so that it's trackable. No more, oh yeah, I just updated it. Well, how did I wind up with 4 less than I had? Where did the 4 go? When was it adjusted? Use this adjustment button, and it works the same way. Enter your part number, pull up the part, and then you can say, oh, it says I have 5. No, I only have 2. And you can say it's missing, or it's moved, or it was shorted, or whatever it was, and tell it, okay. That will become trackable. There's a report for adjustments in here that you can run that report and see exactly what was changed so that you can track what adjustments you made to your inventory. And don't be afraid, like it's a lot of us stock Napa, Auto Values, AutoZone, whoever does your stocking, don't be afraid to bully those guys. Just because you stock 27047 for the last decade doesn't mean you're still bumping through them the way you were, that you need to have them on the shelf. So make your outside reps earn their paycheck. Have them pull your sales report and say, what oil filters have I ordered ones of in the last year and the quantity, and have them provide you with the report, and then figure out what you've got on the shelf that you don't need to have on the shelf anymore. There's another function in here that I absolutely love and most people don't touch, and it is called the browse function. Make it your own. I can't put it any better way. In here, underneath browse, it defaults to something called your top stock, and it pretty much is everything in your inventory. However, did you know that if you press this gear up at the top, you can create your own custom views? So in my case, I've created one that is only my oils. So I can do on-hand checks, adjust price, do all sorts of cool stuff. And what I did, if I look at the guts behind this, I selected the columns I wanted, removed the ones I didn't want, and then I told it I only want to see ones by on-hand supplier if it equals department. In my case, I wanted it by department, and I only wanted to see fluid oil. And then I went and I wanted to sort by my on-hand. So you can create views for your batteries, oil, filters, anything that you guys stock, miscellaneous, your flush stuff, if you like all of us stock BG stuff, if it's BG, you can do that by your supplier. You can do it by on hand. You can do it by line code. You can do it by when it starts. What's cool about this report, if I stretch this out, let's get this out of the way, I can include this to tell me how many have I ever sold, when did I first start stocking it, how many do I have on hand. Here's the fun part. So you need to make changes. Let's say your oil vendor, oh, what a surprise. Your oil vendor just raised the price another 10 cents a quart. If you have this set as a browse, instead of having to go view, add, edit, line by line by line by line, if you have this into a view on your browse, I can click on my first one. It's going to ask me, do you really want to edit? I say, yup. It's going to open up. I make the changes. It's already in the edit mode. Next. Click open the other one. Next line, make my change. Done. And work my way down so I know I've adjusted everything in that department. Wipers, things like that. Use these views and browse because they will be time savers as well as giving you quick and easy snapshots. So don't be afraid to use that browse function. And it's like I said, once you're in here under browse, hit that browse. If you want to make a whole new one, tell it add, name it. So battery. And it's going to give you this starter set. So then you can sit there and apply your filters. So I want departments, I want the batteries, and I'm going to tell it save. I'm going to close it. And if I did it right, there's all my batteries. So now I can go through and adjust my battery prices when Interstate raises the rate on me. So don't be afraid. It's that quick to create a view. Just one after the other, and you can toggle through them to do whatever you need to do. But especially on those of us with large inventories, it makes it far easier to make quick and fast editing instead of having to go through the edit browse every darn time. Okay, the last thing we're going to take a look at is going to be central service. If you are on 3.1, you will have noticed the cute little central service icon on the top banner of your RO. You can imagine me doing the whole Vanna White thing with my hands going, here you go, there's your icon. If you have not, press the button. And if you press here and it's asked you to log in or get credentials, fill out the form to get credentials. It is free in 3.1. In the new central service portal, there's a whole heck of a lot of reports that you can use. So even just in parts, underneath the sales section, you can pull up a part sales detail, very similar. You can see what parts were returned or declined. You can pull up your taxes and cores. And you can be on the beach in the Bahamas with a Mai Tai in your hand while you're doing it. This is available because it is a website as opposed to a physical logging onto your PC. You can do this at home in your jammies, drinking a beer in your Barca Lounger if you want to. You can be wherever you want. So even if you get a little nervous when you go on vacation. So come in here, fiddle about. There's overall sales reports, there's accounts payable, receivable, inventory. If you use DVI, there's some cool reports in there you can play with. If you are a marketing guru, there is an exportable email list as well as one that will export your customer list with the vehicles. So there is more in it than just if you own a chain. If you own a chain, needless to say, you can set some of these up as comparisons and rankings. But this is huge if you're away from the office or you just want to keep an eye on things while you're not physically in shop. Most of the reports give you a slightly different format than what you're used to in RO. They are all exportable, just like everything else. You can kick it out into a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. And if you do wind up having to take your service writers to task, as training. You can do sales by service writer, and it will compare your service writers with what they've got for that date range, as well as their parts, the labor, and totals overall what they've got. So don't be afraid to use that. I really appreciate you guys taking the time today. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.